We are here today with another podcast at EMF Warriors. This is Jamie Montiel. She's put together a wonderful presentation on grounding. A lot of people have detailed questions about grounding all the time on EMF Warriors Facebook page. So we thought we'd put some stuff together that really gets into all of it.
Okay, so what is grounding? Grounding is direct skin contact with the earth or plants or animals. So you could be barefoot on the ground, you could be swimming in the ocean, you could be touching a live tree, or riding on the back of an animal. Indirect grounding is when you're touching a conductive wire that's connected to the earth. So if you're wearing shoes that have copper embedded into the footbed, that's grounding indirectly. And also, people can also ground by connecting to the electrical mains, but we're going to talk about that later, Scott.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, like there's a lot of anecdotal stuff, right? Like how you feel, like if a person typically grounds somewhere over a longer period of time, I'm talking like weeks or months, how they feel after, how their health is potentially improving. Like I have specific things I do that's more anecdotal. I'm sure you do too, Jamie.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about all that later toward the end of this podcast.
Okay. Okay, so anytime you touch a tree or a live animal, you're grounded. So this is what my dad actually did for me. He put copper wire through my flip-flops so that way I could ground in his yard. So
Yeah.
it's really easy. It's really easy to do. You don't have to buy the really expensive grounding flip-flops. I know Earth Runners is a good grounding flip-flop, but they're really expensive and you have to have them custom made, and this is just a really cheap way to ground.
Yeah, a little funny story is I actually made a grounding staff, like a Gandalf staff, where I put the
Okay.
wire and
Yeah.
wound the wire up the staff up to
Oh,
my
that's pretty
hand,
cool.
so then I could hold it while I was touching the ground periodically with it. But it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, you want to do this in nature, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Non-electrified environments. I mean, as far away from civilization as possible, right?
exactly.
Yeah. So you don't want to ground in your home artificially. The third port in the electrical outlet, you don't want to connect to that because you're going to be getting voltage into your body. You're still going to get that current. Um, I tried grounding with those grounding mats and testing my body voltage, and it went down to 0. But then when I tried with a wristband, I was getting shocks. So I stopped. I didn't do it anymore.
Yeah, really the home environment and how the energy flows through the home and how well the home is grounded and even the time of day. Like right now here in Oregon, it's raining outside behind me. So a lot of the energy is actually dispersed a little bit more on the surface because the wet ground helps to disperse the energy. So I'll even see like a drop in my EMF, like my magnetic fields around my house. I have a little bit of magnetic fields, but I'll see it drop
Mm,
when it's all wet outside, right? And then when it gets
yeah.
dry again and it can't ground as well, I'll see the magnetic fields kind of pull up a little bit more. So it really, all these little conditions and factors can matter around electrified environments. So to come down on the side of safety, I do the same thing. I never ground. I never plug into my home's electrical sockets anymore. I also was getting heart palpitations a couple years ago in another
Hmm.
home that I knew had more bad wiring in the home and potentially more current coming in off of even the grounds.
Yeah. Like I thought it was based on the dirty electricity, and I have low levels in my home. So I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
But you can still get some voltage into you. And even if you test with a body voltage meter, it might be 0, but it's still, you're getting something, from the electrical mains. So let's talk about naturally conductive materials. Rock, stone, sand, grass, concrete, and brick are conductive. As long as there's dirt directly underneath the concrete and the brick, you can ground. You can use animal skins for footwear like leather. Touching copper wire, again, that's connected like your Gandalf staff, right? And water or moisture enhances conductivity.
Yeah.
So
Like,
this is why I like to ground at the ocean, by the beach.
So I was going to mention here, a lot of people had questions about, oh, do I have to be touching my feet to the ground, right? So
Mhm.
any part of the body will ground you. Like
Yes.
if you touch your hands, you're fine. Like some people that have had, let's say, stomach problems or whatever, like go to the beach, get under the sand, put your
Yeah.
your your stomach on the sand to,
Mhm.
ground yourself. But although the moment you're touching literally the ground, it's like your whole body becomes grounded.
Yeah.
So it's a little debatable if, like, and I'm even wondering that, like, if you pinpoint a grounding, like a rock or the sand or whatever, to a certain place on the body that might have more an ailment of some kind going on, if it could actually be a little more beneficial because of maybe the energy flows from the ground into your body, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the feet are the best because you have so many like acupuncture points in the feet
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to target every organ once your feet are on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, if you're in the desert, of course, you're not going to be grounded because if it's really dry, you're not getting anything. Let's talk about insulating materials. Asphalt, plastics, natural and synthetic rubber, wood, paints, and other synthetic materials are not conducive to grounding. So, for years, man has had direct skin contact with the earth. My great grandmother, she actually went barefoot her entire life. Like from, since she was a kid, she was always barefoot and she couldn't wear shoes because they were too small for her feet. So she had like hobbit feet.
Yeah, going back to Gandalf again.
Yeah.
I've noticed people in my life, when I was younger, that would walk around as a normal thing, and I remember seeing, the cracky, bad-looking toes and feet, and all dirty all the time. And I'm like, ugh, why aren't you wearing shoes and socks? And I really
Mhm.
never realized that they were benefiting from it, until like the last 10 years. But yeah, it's interesting how times have changed. Back in the '70s, people would just be outdoors more than they were indoors typically,
Mhm.
and people would be going out there playing in the grass or whatever, playing a sport or volleyball, not necessarily wearing their shoes if it was just recreational and just getting out. Now,
Yeah.
of course, we need shoes for protecting our, against sharp objects and such. So,
Yeah, of course. But
and of
then
course, yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
that's where the, conductive footwear comes in. You can, go rock climbing with your conductive flip-flops.
Yeah, and really the rubber soled stuff, what started coming in around the 1950s, kind of in
Mhm.
that generation. And before that, leather was the typical go-to source, for footwear. So we really went from being grounded even when wearing shoes to being ungrounded, insulated, and walking around not connecting to the earth as much.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
in
true.
some ways it could be beneficial if you think about it now with everything being electrified. So
That is
because
true.
the frequency of nature versus the frequency of city spaces, it's in a weird way, the fact that we are insulating ourselves could actually in some cases be a good thing, depending on, right, the amount of energy people are getting into them.
Yeah, but I mean, you still need to ground on a regular basis. Get outside, get barefoot. You need those electrons from the earth. And if you're outside in the sun, that's even better.
Yeah,
We'll talk about that.
doing it at the same time, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so why do you want to ground? Electrical charges build up in your body and you have an increasing body voltage. Electrified environments cause disease, and there are numerous health benefits from grounding on a regular basis. There's no side effects if done in an electrically clean environment, and it's really easy to do. So, how does grounding work? There are about 2,000 active storms throughout the globe, and they generate about 50 lightning strikes per second. So, that's a lot of lightning throughout the world. And that combined with the solar wind, the ionospheric wind, they generate this global atmospheric circuit, which generates all these electrons on the surface of the earth, right?
Yeah, just depending on the solar wind and the solar wind strength and the magnetosphere and the wind that comes off, that just generates these fields and actually generating the Schumann at the same time, right?
Yeah. So
So,
it's all connected.
and
Yeah.
it,
Like the Schumann resonance is strongest where there are the most thunderstorms. So anywhere near the equator where there's like, Central Africa, Southeast Asia, Central America, where all the lightning storms are generated, this helps to create the Schumann resonance. And this is 7.83 hertz, and it's harmonics. And it helps to generate the global atmospheric circuit. So, the Earth and the ionosphere creates this cavity, and, the waves that go through in between the cavity create the Schumann resonance. So the body is a liquid crystalline semiconductor. Okay, so we can absorb and donate electrons. So if you have a dog that's running around outside and he comes back in and you pet the dog, you're getting electrons from your dog.
or your spouse maybe, or something.
Yeah. Whoever goes outside barefoot comes back in, you touch them, you're getting those electrons, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting thought. Yeah, just thinking about how people are walking their dogs outside with a leash, and let's say you're using a metal leash or a leather leash. As you're actively walking your dog, the dog is being grounded, and you're getting benefits through that, even if you're wearing insulated shoes.
Yes.
So, so I think, I have a suspicion that when doctors say, "Hey, get a dog for your health," my dad was told that when after his heart surgery, he said, "You should really get a dog for your health and go walk it every day." Yes, there is benefits having a dog, right? But
Yeah.
there's additional benefits with grounding that I think people are completely unaware of.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so when you're grounded, there's a transfer of negative charges from the earth into your body, and this stabilizes your internal electric environment. Your body's positive charges are discharged into the ground, and the body becomes at equilibrium with the earth. So you're going to have a net negative charge, you know?
Yeah, that we should talk about that a little bit more. That humans ideally should have a little bit of a net negative charge in them,
Hmm.
and it's interesting to measure this with either multimeters or like a body voltage meter, and see
Hmm.
where if you're sitting around in environments that are indoor around electric fields and such, your body voltage could really start spiking high and becoming a positive voltage. And if you're spending a lot of time in those environments, right, then it's exactly what you're saying here on this slide.
Yeah. Your body's protected when you're grounded from ambient man made radiation. And I can tell you one time I had a headache and I decided to go try grounding to see if it would help. So I, sat myself down on the concrete, pavement, and I was barefoot. I sat in the sun, and it took about 30 minutes for me to actually feel my headache going away. And then I was like, wow, this is great. I don't need to take Tylenol. Um,
Yeah,
and then I sat outside for a little bit longer, maybe like 2 hours. And then I went back inside and I was feeling good. And then my headache came back within 30 minutes. So that's why, like, you need to ground on a regular basis. Like, you can't just, you know, um, do it just because, oh, I have a headache. And, you have to do it on a regular basis to actually feel the benefits. Like, I knew if I was like grounding consistently back then maybe I wouldn't even have that headache.
and it's true. It's like when people get headaches or even migraines coming on, it's like they think, okay, I'll pick up this like Tylenol or whatever and drink this,
Hmm.
when really the drinking of the water is more beneficial, in my opinion, to some of the stuff that you could take just as a pill. And
Hmm.
like you say, if you combine it, if you drink some water, or like you said, go out and ground if you don't have access to water, you're getting electrons in, you're helping to remove any positive charge that could be in your body that's causing problems.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried it again where I went to the beach when I had a headache and it went away when I was at the beach, but I was there like the whole day. So, you really need to build up your reserves of electrons.
Yeah, I should talk a little bit. I was just thinking about how a lot of people could be like watching this podcast and thinking about, well, is this all anecdotal, just placebo kind of stuff that, oh, somebody told me grounding is good for you. I go out and do this thing, and I think I'm getting, one with nature or something woo, right? And really there's scientific credibility to back this up. I mean, you
Yeah.
go on to PubMed. I mean, we're doing this and we're showing you this stuff because we're interested in the science, even
Yeah.
though it can seem very wooey to people.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna share the references with you at the end, and there are more resources too.
Right.
What are the pathways through the body? We get electrons through our skin, we absorb them through our mucosal surfaces too. It's conducted through our entire body through the tensegrity system. So the fascia and extracellular matrix, they conduct electrons. And it's also conducted through acupuncture points and meridians.
Yeah, this is really neat stuff. Like, I really recommend reading Robert O. Becker, because
Hmm.
he goes into how the body's controlled with, DC current, DC through our system, DC, direct currents. And it's really, his work really helped to provide the basis of all this.
Yes. The whole body is a redox system. You have charged reservoirs located throughout your body. Filling of these reservoirs is gradual, so you might need to spend a whole day at the beach to recharge yourself. When your reservoirs are saturated, the body is ready to deal with inflammation. So, mitochondria, our favorite topic, right, Scott?
Oh, yes. How can you not get away from mitochondria?
Yeah, I mean, it affects everything. So, when you have an electron deficiency, it's actually going to, dramatically influence mitochondria. A lack of electrons desaturates the electron transport chain, and there's less of a demand on mitochondria when you're grounded. Mitochondrial EMFs are coupled with the Earth's EMFs. We talked about that in the last PowerPoint, Scott.
Yeah. This can get really deep really fast, but just seeing this as an overview is wonderful. Like, thinking about even the proximity and distances of what's going on inside the mitochondria at these like quantum levels can become very mind-blowing.
Okay, so I've read a lot of studies about grounding, and you're getting a lot of conflicting results just because they're not. I don't know how they conduct these studies sometimes, because there was one study where they used dummies coated in aluminum foil to represent humans, and you can't do that, when it comes to grounding. Yeah, I mean, you can't conduct these experiments in laboratories when you're surrounded by the electrical grid, and you
Yeah.
need to do this outside. You need to be directly connected to the earth. You need to be barefoot. There haven't been that many studies where they have the subjects connected directly to the earth, barefoot on the ground. They have them connected to the electrical mains. They have them connected to, a metal driven into the wire connected to metal driven into the ground, you know?
Yeah, it's just going to become harder and harder as we move into the future to get good studies here. I'm sure they can be done if enough funding is pushed into them, into those
Yeah.
labs, and that's really what it's
Yeah.
going to take is people really serious about this to really get better results. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are the benefits of grounding? Grounding regulates the circadian rhythm, so it normalizes cortisol. It improves sleep quality. It balances the autonomic nervous system, so there's a shift from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic mode. It stimulates the vagal nerve. It improves heart rate variability. It reduces pain and inflammation. It promotes healing and recovery, so your immune system is improved. It decreases blood viscosity and red blood cell aggregation. It neutralizes free radicals, and it influences pH, and it balances electrolytes.
Yeah, that second to the last one on your list, neutralizes free radicals, might be shocking to some people, but right in PubMed, there's an article that says, use grounding as a form of antioxidant.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like right there. People aren't really aware of this stuff. Also, the other side of this is, I think about like what were humans doing 1,000 years ago, and they might have been walking around. Maybe they were insulated from time to time, but they would sit down for the night, go to sleep, and
Hmm.
possibly sleep on, the earth, you know,
Yeah.
covered up with a blanket or whatever. But they would get connected all night long, and this is what animals do. I mean, I watch out here where I'm at, deer coming in, and they'll come in and sleep. Come in and onto my rocks, and they'll stay here all night long and sleep, and they're getting grounded all night long.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how, again, we've moved to indoor environments where we don't ground. So I've actually tried to weave this in a little bit more. About 30 minutes before I go to sleep at night, I'll go out here if it's warm enough, or I have an indoor wall that's grounded. Although it's a little sketchy, right, because it's indoors. But I'll try to get out and get grounded before I go to sleep. And
Mm.
a lot of people just don't have that luxury because they're living in the middle of a city. And it's like, well, where do I go to get grounded? And that's really the big question.
Yeah, that's true. And let's say you're flying like a 24-hour flight and you don't want to get jet lag. The first thing you should do is ground because that will normalize your circadian rhythm and you're getting the electrons from the earth where you are, and that will kind of tell your body what time zone you're in.
Oh, that's an interesting point. I haven't
Yeah.
really thought about that. If I'm in one place, and then 10 hours later I'm in another place, and,
Hmm.
and it helps to normalize, yeah, the rhythm a bit more.
Yeah, I
Getting
mean,
outside, of course, into the light will help normalize it
that's
too.
true. And it's
Yeah.
gonna you're not gonna have too much jet lag.
Yeah.
So it's going to help with, it really helps with sleep because when I'm out at the beach all day, I sleep like a baby,
Yeah.
and I dream, I have a really good sleep when I'm grounded at the beach. Um, like I said before, if you have a headache, go outside, ground.
Hmm. Yeah, I find it's also independent of exercise. Like, a lot of people say, "Oh, I go to the gym late at night and I exercise really hard and it makes me sleepy and I'll get to sleep easier." But when we talk about sleep quality, we're talking about how deeply you're getting into your sleep. I mean, if you're still inflamed and you've just gone to the gym and you're working out late at night because you think you're benefiting your sleep, you need to still think about what's happening over the course of weeks to your sleep quality if you're actually still getting deeply into REM, and the tiredness goes away. You wake up instantly in the morning, you're alert, everything's good,
Yeah.
is a good sign. And also if you're dreaming and if you remember your dreams is another good sign of sleep quality.
Yes, that's true. And like in one of the studies, they talked about DOMS, delayed onset muscle
Yeah.
soreness, and when they grounded the subjects, they experienced less delayed onset muscle soreness. So if you're an athlete, if you run, you might need to ground on a regular basis just to help you recover. Like I see a lot of people running on the beach sometimes, and they're running with sneakers. So this is not a good thing because when you run, you're picking up massive amounts of electrostatic charges, a lot of positive charges on your body when you're running versus walking, right? And this is with shoes on. So once you're barefoot, if you go running barefoot on the beach, you're going to dissipate all those positive charges into the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, like humidity levels matter as well, like you're saying before. If you're out in the desert versus, typically at the beach, luckily it's usually pretty humid. But yeah, I've had times like even on, day I live in Central Oregon. I live in kind of like a high desert biome,
Uh-huh.
climate. And
Uh-huh.
just getting in and out of my car every day, I get snapped and shocked, right? And I know there's discharges going on. So a lot of times what I'll do is when I know that's happening, I will, like, as I'm walking in somewhere, I'll grab a tree for like, a few seconds or even a minute, or sit down on a stone. There's like a stone bench area. I know where there is. I'll just go sit down on the stone bench,
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
reground for a few minutes and go back and do what I was doing.
Yeah. I know we talked about grounding to the electrical mains before and testing your body voltage. You should never test it with a electrical ground. You have to test it outside in the real ground.
That's
You have
right.
to drive like a metal, stake into the ground. You could use like a screwdriver or something and make sure the ground is moist or it's not going to be conductive. You're not going to get a good reading.
Yeah, the depth of the ground obviously matters. That's why, they
Hmm.
use 9 foot copper poles for grounding a home, because it
Yeah.
really, like, once you get it way down there, if it's more surface grounding, just in general, your home's not going to be grounded well at all. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing with like trying to measure this out in the environment. Like the deeper you can get, usually the better, or trying different places, because even where you ground, and the conducting, how things are conducted in the earth just matters, right?
Yes. Okay, so grounding improves your zeta potential. The zeta potential is the electrophoretic potential. It's this net negative charge that the red blood cells build up, and if you ground yourself, this increases. So there's a higher repulsive charge between red blood cells. So there's less clumping, there's less aggregation. This helps to thin the blood. It reduces this reduces blood viscosity. It improves blood flow. There's less resistance in peripheral blood vessels. And so this has numerous implications for so many diseases. And you think cardiovascular disease or other neurovascular diseases, et cetera, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, this goes back to grounding is like nature's antioxidant. Like without getting away from this is like, you think of other antioxidants, most people think of, oh, vitamin C, but no, I'm saying like melatonin, right? And vitamin D and like all these other really
Yeah.
awesome free radical scavengers are wonderful, but you got to kind of view the earth as this free radical scavenger as well. And it's just like, like helping thin your blood, helping all your blood systems in general.
Yeah.
This combined with sunlight and having the sun come in and charge up your hemoglobin. I mean, this gets a little more quantum, but like this all in tandem, like nature has it already built for our health, and it's just
Yes.
here for the taking. And I think you're going to mention later, and it's free. We're not saying we're charging you for this now. Well, maybe you have to if you have to find a home that's like closer to nature. I mean, I found that
Yeah,
out recently, to get out of population centers or having access to it, right? Making the time to get access to it.
that's true. And there was a study that I was reading, and they grounded the subjects. They had diabetic foot ulcers that they were really hard to heal, and they grounded them, and the ulcers were able to heal a lot quickly. And it's just amazing to think that, oh, how can grounding heal this wound? But it can. It can actually speed up the recovery process.
Now, this again goes all the way back to Becker's and Andrew Marino's works and stuff with DC inside the human body and in life systems. I mean, in general, like
Mhm.
how like the fundamental question, why do we have these things built into us where when we get damaged we can heal back, and how do these processes work? So creating a way to make these processes more effective for us instead of like halting them, right, and slowing them down. That's what really grounding is beneficial for
Yeah.
the inflammation reduction, the antioxidant effects and such.
Yeah. I mean, Becker talked about the perineural junctions, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, that's connected to the acupuncture system. It's connected to the tentegrity system. It's connected to the fascia. So this is the whole body, system that's connected, to our environment.
Yeah, these currents in the body are so hard to measure too. I mean, they're really
Yeah.
very super small, so
Yeah.
like you have to have the science done correctly and like look at all the data points and kind of even them out over time to really get a good understanding of what's going on when you're when you're looking for them. But we've got these all running through us, and it's this is on a real deep level that's really affecting our health and long-term health if like we stay ungrounded for like a lot of people stay ungrounded for months, right? Not even know it.
Yeah.
Or maybe not necessarily true, because we do connect to the earth in really weird ways from time to time. Like
Yeah.
if I'm using the restroom and that connection from my body through the water then into the toilet's water is actually creating a little bit of a ground, right?
Yeah. I mean, Stephen McGee talked about that in his book. He wouldn't
Okay.
urinate in the toilet. So,
Yeah. So there's
yeah.
really weird little ways that we'll connect not knowing it from time to time, but like we're talking like getting out there for a good chunk of time, like 15 minutes minimum, half hour daily, if not
Daily. It has to be
longer.
daily. I
Yeah.
mean, I just want to tell you about my story because I have allergies. I have hay fever in the springtime, and it gets really bad sometimes. And there was one time I was living by the beach for about like a year and a half, and I was grounding on a regular basis, except in the wintertime, right?
Hmm.
And I was, getting the ocean air. I was grounding. I was getting as much sunlight as I could. And the time that I was living there, I didn't have allergies. And I was like, wow, this is a miracle. It just went away. But then when I moved away from the beach, it came back. So, I mean, grounding on a consistent basis, throughout the spring, summer, fall was enough to get me through the winter of not grounding and have enough reserve so I didn't get allergies that spring.
Yeah,
It's pretty amazing, you
yeah,
know?
that in combination with the sunlight again, it's
Yeah, the
like
sunlight.
the
Yeah.
the sun and grounding both together just you know reduce all these symptoms and diseases and such. So yeah, like I think a lot because I have an 8-year old. I think a lot about like the frequency of it, all the students that he's with, and all the little hay fever and things you've said that I've
Mhm.
seen throughout the year, and then I see the behaviors of the kids. They're typically ungrounded, but they like luckily a lot of the kids now at this new school, they get them out 3 times a day at recess.
Oh, that's really
and
good.
and at recess they have the metal bar contraptions that they have fun in doing the little monkey bar stuff, right?
Yeah,
And
jungle gym,
I
yeah.
yeah, and I see them all the time touching the ground, and they're continuously like out there 3 times a day. So for their
Mhm.
health, they like I don't even think even the teachers and the admins are even aware that getting them outside into the sun and getting grounded on these things could be a
Yeah.
massive, massive benefit for them. But and I think people have an instinct, they know getting them outside to recess is a good thing, but
Mhm.
they're thinking more of the, oh, I'm getting them the air quality, it's good air, so it's good for them, and that's all, and they leave it at that, and they don't really think about the other biophysics that are going on, like all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, kids now, it's very different from when we were growing up because when we were growing up, we were playing outside. We were getting dirty. We were scraping our knees, right?
Yeah, and especially in kids because they have faster cellular metabolism,
Mm.
and they have smaller biomass. They're really the ones that need the grounding and the sunlight probably more than adults to a point, because everything is churning so quickly in their bodies,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the cellular like construction, right? Getting a small human being to a big human being over the course of 18 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things when I was a kid was to climb trees. That was one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, me too.
And kids don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah, I have memories as being like 4 years old, climbing trees, cherry trees, eating the cherries out of the trees, then seeing fake, looking what I thought was wheat. So I was like
Uh-huh.
picking the wheat and getting bundles of wheat and bringing it to my mom, saying, "Hey, it's time to make some bread." And she was like, "Okay, sure, I'll take this wheat and make it." And of course, she threw it in the trash without me knowing. So
Yeah, I mean, kids need to explore the outdoors. I mean, we actually get our creativity and imagination from being out in nature. So it's so important for kids to, spend some time outdoors every day. So grounding improves your overall health. It mitigates disease by charging your mitochondria. It structures your water batteries. It builds up a reserve of negative charges, which improves your redox potential. Add sunlight and you're supercharged.
yeah.
So this is one of my favorite Jack Kruse quotes. You have to focus on your redox.
Yeah, redox before you detox. And that is really what it is. And so if you're continuously not detoxing, and you're not getting your antioxidants from the earth, and you're not getting your sunlight frequencies, then over the course of time, right? Like like I like to view this over the course of weeks and months kind of thing, but a lot of people think, oh yeah, daily, yeah, you want it, and things are going on daily inside in second to second inside your body. But people that habitually just have behaviors where they're not getting outside, they're not getting their sun, they're not getting grounding, then it's really interesting in those people specifically to like switch it up and like go on vacation for a week and try the sun and the grounding to see if you
Yes.
see massive improvements in your
Hmm.
health. Like a lot of people like myself that's ES with electro sensitivities, this is really paramount. I'll see a lot of my specific issues get diminished, and even diminished right when I touch a tree. Like
Yeah.
if I have tinnitus going on and I get outside, my tinnitus, I have very fast or on off tinnitus, but if I get outside right when I get my tinnitus, touch a tree or a rock or whatever, typically within just 5 minutes, my tinnitus will subside and go away completely. And then
Yeah.
same with like I have very weak vessels in the back of my eye, so I'll get some blood leakage that could happen. This happened throughout all my life, but mainly through my 20s and my 30s, I was really ungrounded, really in front of computers all the time.
Hmm.
Never, like, I was actually avoiding the sun almost on purpose at times.
Really?
And yeah, and I had all kinds of eye issues that manifested in the tissues that, like I said, I have very weak back there, but I built up my strength, my retinal strength over time. And but occasionally I'll get outside and just ground for, again, that balance of the electron balance in my tissues, especially knowing if I've been saturated in indoor environments, and I might run the risk of a capillary burst in the back of my retina. That's never a good thing.
Yeah. Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's always best to ground and get sunlight. That way you're completing the circuit, right? You're getting, photons from the sun and you're getting electrons from the earth, and you're balancing out, the positive and the negative charges, and you're getting more negative charges from being connected to the earth.
Yeah, it plays like to the circadian rhythms. It plays to all the cycling and everything else that your body's expecting at certain times of day. Like here, morning time, I'm having more cortisol activated to wake me up.
Hmm.
More glutamate is going on in my system. But
Hmm.
later in the evening, the melatonin will kick in, and just all this having nature work to power your circadian rhythm is, again, super beneficial for the health in the long term.
Yeah. So grounding is time dependent. Like Scott said, he feels it instantly as soon as he touches a tree. So it depends on how filled your reservoirs are. So once disconnected, there's a gradual return to the previous condition. That's why you need to ground on a regular basis for sustained benefits.
Yeah. And like, feel it again. It's like it goes back to this woo woo kind of thing. It's like some people that have more sensitivities to
Hmm.
their ailments have, more they're more hyper focused on what they know that's affecting them. And this can go back to the placebo effect. Like, well, do I actually think, like, mentally think I'm benefiting from the earth by touching a tree instantly to, like, make these issues go away? you know I know there's science that backs it up, and even if there is a placebo effect, it could be a mental benefit even if there's nothing going on. So I
Yeah,
do it anyway.
yeah,
Like, even if it's placebo or not, I'm getting the benefit. I can actually, in my case, I can see the benefit. If I have an eye spot manifestation,
yeah,
touch a tree, a few minutes later this manifestation just goes away. Versus in the past, if I didn't touch the tree and I stayed ungrounded, I was not connecting to the earth, then this spot could last days, weeks, or months. So I'd
wow,
be looking in front of a computer with a blind spot, already feeling woozy and dizzy because I have this blind spot here. Versus, oh, I see this blind spot, I'm going to go out, immediately ground, hopefully, cauterize, potentially cauterize or stop this blood flow from my
mhm,
retina, and help myself as any way I can possibly can in the short term. And I found that, sometimes, very rarely, if I try now to connect, the tinnitus does take longer to fall off. And I really haven't gotten blood spots like in the last 5 years,
that's good.
in any terrible way.
Mhm.
So I've only had more like them, like visual things starting to form, and then I'll go touch and ground, and those will immediately go away.
Wow,
So maybe,
yeah.
yeah.
For me, it's like being at the beach is just so relaxing, and that alone is just like priceless. So that's why I do it.
Yeah, just the level of stress is just gone,
Yeah, it's
right?
just, it's just so relaxing, especially at the beach. There's just something about the beach, for me at least, where I'm just completely relaxed and at peace almost.
Yeah, well, it's the sound mechanics too, the
Yeah.
phonons, and all the hearing of the
It's the
wave.
waves of the
Yeah.
ocean. Yeah, it's the ocean air too.
Yeah, it's similar effect like when I go down to the river and there's, all the waves are crashing over the rocks continuously. It's the same kind of effect. I just feel at peace.
Yeah. So if you want to read more about grounding and earthing, you can check out the Earthing book, which is by Clint Ober, Steven Sinatra, and Martin Zucker. It's a really good book. I think everyone needs to read this book. And I also have an article on EMF warriors. You can check that out. And Scott, you've compiled you know, a lot of sources on grounding, right? A lot of
Yeah.
articles.
Yeah, I have like, and I've posted them in the past, like on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
But there's, it's still coming in, and all of this, all the newer stuff with that I find on the biophysics in general, from sun to the earth, everything. I will pull in all the time to the Facebook page and just have people look at it. But what I also do, in kind of behind the scenes, is I'll take a lot of these articles, especially up on PubMed, and I will put them up at the EMF Warriors libraries directly on the website, so people
Yeah.
can get a reference there if they happen to not be following the Facebook page. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely check out the library.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for doing this. This will hopefully give people a lot more insight. And it's simple, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
like,
Get
people think
outside.
about grounding, and people that haven't heard of this or haven't done it, they're more like just discovering grounding and sunlight benefits, nature benefits for the first time.
Mhm.
It's really good to just get an overview and see what we're doing, and give people what we've experienced. Some anecdotal evidence in our lives that we call evidence might not be
Yeah.
scientific evidence, but
Yeah.
it's what we experienced, and we've benefited from it. I've benefited from doing this for about 10 years now.
Yeah.
uh,
You really have to do it on a regular basis to feel the effects. So
yeah.
thanks again, Scott. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me.
All right,
See you
thanks,
soon.
Jamie. All right.
Okay. Bye.